Does Terence Crawford have a weak resume, a strong resume, or is it just kind of mid? Is it better than Canelo Alvarez's resume? Let's get into it, because a lot of people know that Terence Crawford kind of broke the boxing internet when he said that Errol Spence Jr. isn't going to be in the Hall of Fame. It was crazy to hear Bud say that, because honestly, Errol Spence is Bud's best opponent, so it's like almost discrediting the hard work you put in. That was your most highly anticipated matchup that you had, and to say that Errol Spence isn't a Hall of Famer, how great is that win then? You know, at least if that's what Terence Crawford's saying, by his standards, is he a Hall of Famer himself? You know, that's the kind of stuff we want to know from Bud, because it was really surprising to hear him say that, because Spence was a great fighter. You know, Shakur Stevenson even said it. You know, if Errol Spence never fought Terence Crawford, he'd still be that top guy. And if it weren't for Terence Crawford, Errol Spence would be undisputed at 147. So taking that into account, I don't think it's fair to say that Errol Spence isn't going to be in the Hall of Fame, or, you know, how would Spence make it to the Hall of Fame? Because I don't think the only indicator of a Hall of Famer is whether or not you move up and down in weight classes, because even though Crawford was able to do that, his resume isn't that much better than Errol Spence's. You know, honestly, beating Spence is the only thing that he has over Earl. Otherwise, it's not much better of a resume than Terence Crawford. You know, Terence Crawford doesn't have much of a better resume than Errol Spence, honestly. You know, and I'm not trying to be a hater, but that's just facts. With this highly anticipated matchup, I think that's the reason why Terence Crawford is fighting Canelo Alvarez, because indirectly, this is like Bud getting that Pacquiao fight, getting that Mayweather fight that he wanted. You know, he wanted those big fights, but he wasn't a big enough name, so now he has to kind of settle for whoever's left, you know, and that's Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez already has a better resume than Terence Crawford. Honestly, losing to Floyd Mayweather makes Canelo's resume better than Terence Crawford's automatically, in my opinion. You know, even though Terence Crawford hasn't lost, you know, he hasn't really fought a great fighter. Not that Spence isn't a great fighter. I think Spence is a Hall of Famer, but when it comes down to it, you know, my standards for great, I'm talking like Pacquiao, De La Hoya, I'm talking Marquez, you know, all those guys that were Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao's era. If you look at Terence Crawford's era, the guys that he's beaten, they're good, they're better than good, but they're not that same upper tier. And it's not Terence Crawford's fault. You know, he can't control who's, you know, fighting him in terms of the timing of it, the eras of it. You know, he was born during this era, so, and fighting at his best during this era, so he can't really control, you know, the fact that De La Hoya is already retired, Marquez is retired, and then, you know, Pacquiao and Floyd were there, but towards the later end of their careers, so Terence never got that fight. So it's like, honestly, Terence Crawford, this is his opportunity against Canelo to basically say, like, indirectly, you know, he fought Floyd, you know, he fought Manny, because this is as close as he can get. Because we all know his resume is not the best in the world, and it's not his fault, because there aren't that many opponents out there for him. But the facts are that he doesn't have a great resume, and he's beaten a lot of, you know, solid fighters, but no one that's tremendous, or someone that's really gonna send him up to that legends table with Pacquiao and Floyd. There's nobody that he could fight right now that would do that. Even if he beats Canelo, I still don't think that Terence Crawford is sitting at that table with Floyd and Manny. You know, he might be close to it, but still, you know, these guys were different. These guys were different, and they had much more difficult opposition, in my opinion, than Terence Crawford has. You know, Gamboa, Sean Porter, those are like some of his best wins. Spence, obviously, but you talk about Manny and Floyd, you know, they were fighting Marquez, they both fought Hatton. Like, these guys, De La Hoya, it was a different time. It's not fair to compare them, because honestly, Manny and Floyd fought so many better fighters. So many other legends were still there when it was Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather's prime, that they could fight. For Terence Crawford, he has to kind of settle for this Canelo fight, because Canelo is honestly the only huge star that would maybe add something to Terence Crawford's legacy. So that's why Bud needs this fight. But, you know, it was interesting to hear him kind of tear down that Errol Spence is getting into the Hall of Fame, because that's your biggest win. Why would you try to take away from your biggest accomplishment? And almost, you know, takes a step back. And maybe that's how he feels. And to an extent, I'm kind of saying the same thing. You know, Spence is great, but he also didn't fight the best version of him. So, you know, that, and then in a combination of Terence Crawford saying that Spence isn't a Hall of Famer, how great is Crawford? resume-wise. You know, it's interesting. So let me know down below what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next boxing video. Peace.